Hi, thank you so much for coming to our first five from the archive. We're kicking this off with Lynne Blount as our first guinea pig. Just as a quick heads up, for the first couple of minutes, Lynne has a slight delay on her video, but this doesn't matter when you get into the images and they're well worth watching. Lynne, thanks so much for being part of this. And I know you've already presented to Camversation and it has had the most tremendous impact. I know we are still seeing people sharing all of their fantastic work, all of that inspiration from your sessions, from your session, because you've got more coming up. And then we thought we'd have a chat and see if we could share some of your images, which I suppose are a little bit important to you. So 5 images that you think are really key or important to you from the last sort of year or so, maybe a little bit longer. So thanks very much for coming along to this and being the guinea pig as well, because it's the first time. Lynne, I wonder whether we could just talk a little bit about your background to start with. I know you and I sort of share a common interest, a common background, but I'm interested in your sort of previous career and sort of how that brought you to this level of creativity, because they don't always go hand in hand, do they, what you did before?
No, it's thank you for that introduction. It's interesting, my background. It's usually a conversation stopper because I worked in behaviour management. So I was the senior advisor in Essex for behaviour management. And in the last 10 years of that work, I worked solely in schools causing concern. I always say I will write a book one day, but what I have always had in my work is an outlet for creativity. So I wrote and designed, and with the help of a lot of other people and team members for ideas and all that sort of thing. But we put together a huge resource pack for all the schools in Essex. So we did primary and a secondary one. And even before computers came out, I was the first behaviour support teacher in Essex, going back to 1989. And even then, I was lecture setting. I would sit for hours at the weekend, lecture setting little resources for children who were having difficulties in school. So I guess I was kind of creative in that way, but also I was what people described at work as functionally creative. In other words, I used to design forms for people to fill in, meeting minutes and things. So people didn't have to kind of duplicate stuff. And they were, quite used quite a lot in other departments other than ours. And when I first started in photography, those people that have watched the presentation will know, I went straight into street because I had spent my working life, watching children, watching adults, observing, seeing what was going on. And so it seemed to me to be a natural progression. I've always taken pictures from when I was sort of 10. I had my first camera and my main focus then was ponies and horses and animals. I was always photographing the cat or the dog. But I didn't really take it up again until 2012. A couple of years after I retired, took early retirement from work and joined 2 camera clubs, which taught me a huge amount, even how to mount a picture. Which for me is amazing because I'm not the most practical person, as people will tell you. But that's how I got into it, really, and then gradually developed into what I wanted to do, which was creative. Interestingly, over 50 years ago, when I got married, I actually asked the photographer if he could possibly do a multiple exposure. And he looked at me as if I was completely mad. But he did try. He tried to get our heads in a wine glass. He just missed because it was really hit and miss with film, wasn't it, to do multiple exposure? So I've always been interested in multiple exposures. It's the serendipity of it that I really enjoy.
Thank you. And actually, it's interesting to notice it almost went back that far because your work with, I suppose, the aid of digital techniques that allows for that and enables that much, I'm not going to say more simply, but much more easily, because it's not simple, but it is easier. Yeah. I think that's what makes your work really stand out and it allows you to express yourself as well. So thank you so much. We are looking forward to seeing your 5 from the archive, your top 5 images, if you like. So let's see if we can get some screen sharing done and we'll put those on. So thank you.
Let's do it. This picture is called Red Berries. And It's close to my heart because I was out for a walk one day and there's been a lot of development near where I live and not always popular. And I was wandering around having a look at the new houses. And then suddenly I came around this corner and there was this kind of skeletal tree with a huge amount of berries. I've never seen so many berries on one tree. And I thought, right, get the camera out. I'm definitely going to do something with these berries. And I decided, I couldn't decide really which method to use. And I did several. But in the end, I did a little bit of pet ventosa, but there was a lot of debris. So I had to be careful how much I walked round. But also, I just wanted to capture that kind of skeletal feel. So I did the PEP and I did a couple of multiple exposures as well, and only using the kind of orangey white balance. And when I brought it home, I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with this because it just seemed so impressionistic. And then I thought about it and I just thought, well, actually, it's what I saw. I saw a profusion of red and pink with a kind of orangey background. So I just did some normal processing with it. I quite like the way the branches are just kind of thin. And I just love the profusion of berries. And to be honest, it's one of those pictures that you use as a tonic. I use as a tonic because when it's grey outside, I have it on my wall. So when it's really grey and miserable, I often just sit and look at it and think, wow, it was just beautiful, that view. In amongst all the debris of building and everything else, this little tree had produced these wonderful berries. So, it remains a favourite of mine.
And the warmth it just shares, doesn't it? It's absolutely stunning. Thank you. Thank you. And was that in stark contrast to the environment that was around it as well?
Yes, and that was the thing is because, they're modern houses, they're kind of, constructed in straight lines. They're all the same. And some of the debris was, what builders tend to leave debris, don't they, sometimes? And there was all kind of debris and stuff. But this little tree on its own, you're not going to spoil my view. I'm going to produce whatever happens. And so there it was. I've had a love affair with Henry Moore since I was 5, and we moved into a new town, and there was his family group. And I remember my mother actually saying, whatever's that? But for me, as a 5-year-old, it was absolutely fascinating because I could see in that naive way that a 5-year-old does that it was a family and it felt like our family. I just love his sculptures and the colours of the bronzes. And in a sunlight foundation, which I have to say, all right, because that's part of our agreement with the foundation to take pictures, to make pictures there. This is called Colours and Curves. And I love the colours. It's 2 ICMs actually put together in Photoshop. I have spent the last 6 years at the foundation, 7 years now, I think. And it never fails to amaze me, the sort of pictures you can obtain from those wonderful sculptures. This I love because it gives me a sense of infinity. It brings together the 2 greatest loves of the sea and the curves. And I love the curves in this because to me they represent more. And you just feel like infinity goes on forever. And it doesn't seem daunting when you look at this image. It remains my favorite of all time, basically, this one.
I could see why. And I was going to ask, until you mentioned the notion of the sea and the earth, I was going to ask whether that was an intentional choice to have the blue kind of aqua colours to the base and the warmer orange tones on the top. So because this does almost strike me as a sunrise or a sunset as well.
Well, that's the other thing everybody loves, isn't it? A good sunset. So it does remind me of the sunset. It does remind me of the light across the water as it comes in and goes very quickly. You have a few minutes, don't you, to work on a sunset before that particular view that's moved you moves on. So yes, I mean, I love the colours in this image, and I have it printed on HD aluminium. So you actually see what you get. It's it's reproduced as it is on the screen. So yeah, I'm very fond of it.
Yeah, I'm sure we all are. This really is a work of art. This is definitely one I'd like on my wall as well. Probably in HD aluminium too.
Okay, the next one, something completely different. Because of course the other love of my life is nature, wildlife, and this was made on a trip to Snettisham, where you have to get up really early to see the birds take off. And I have no idea what the birds were now, but I don't think that matters, because to me, this image is about flight. It's about the ephemeral nature of flight. Again, you've got the sea. How many times do us as photographers try and get a sharp image of a bird? And I just thought, oh, blow that. I don't see them sharply when they're in the air. I see them as a blur as they whiz past. And there is a kind of, a contrast or a similarity in some respects between the movement of the sea, the movement of the birds. And it's a scene we see so often and we don't take a lot of notice of. So it gives me that sense of freedom of going homeward, because they were going home, the birds. And it just, for me, it's fluid. It's fluid, like the sea, like the sky, like the birds. They kind of all mesh together. And I enjoyed the color palette of it too.
Yeah, and I'm sure many would agree, Lynne. There's almost a relief, three-dimensional tactile quality to this, isn't there? I almost feel I could touch this image. You must feel the same. It almost looks like it has depth to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And again, it's a memory of a very early morning. Lots of other photographers, all with their tripods, desperately trying to get a sharp picture of these birds. And there's me and my friend sort of swinging our cameras around, trying to get something that shows the essence of these birds rather than the reality. But it's more like a memory than a reality to me. It's how I remembered, things were. So I just love the movement of it. I like the marks. I like the contrast. I love the blues. Blue's not my colour, but I do like that blue in that image. We've got more blue, and I am totally obsessed with grasses. I can't walk past grasses or any of those little spindly plants without wanting to make an image of some kind. This one I enjoy because the grasses were separated out, and often you don't get that. And when you get them home, it's a bit of a mess, and you have to start, taking bits of it out. Whereas this one, I liked the change of blues. I like the fact that it looks at, you've got an area where it looks, you're thinking to yourself, what's going on underneath those plants? So it gave a kind of view of underground, of the subtleties of little marks and scratches and bulges from underneath. And then the contrast of the darker area and then the lighter area of the sky. And then these wonderful grasses that were just there and easily defined for a change. So again, it's like looking into an infinity to me. I've always loved this picture, although it's very, very simple. And some people would say, well, is it worth it standing on its own? For me, it's just an image that reminds me of being out in the wild, really, and sitting for hours trying to capture grasses in a meaningful way.
And I think the intimacy of this really appeals, doesn't it? Because very often when we go and photograph grass and woods, we go for those grand pictures. We go for the big pictures where we try to envelop as much as possible. Whereas looking for these tiny details like this is this phrase, the intimate landscape, isn't it? This is an entire landscape image in a small fraction of the environment.
It is, yeah. It's remains one of my favourites, that one. This is Autumn Red. This was a chance encounter with a tree I must have walked past 100 times. It's in Audley End House, which is a English heritage place near where we live. Very beautiful. I do spend a lot of time there. And I was on my own. on that day, and I'd just come back from the ponds actually, and I was making images of the water lilies, which are particularly glorious there at certain times. And I was walking back and I thought, my gosh, and the light suddenly hit this tree. You know how that light suddenly, and it was almost like it was lit, somebody had lit all the lights inside it. And I thought, right, get the camera out again, because I was actually on my way home. And I thought, I will try and do something like I read about, this pet ventosa technique. So I set about dancing around the tree really and taking images every few steps, and got home. And then I thought, well, I now have, it must have been probably near 50, 60 images. I can't remember exactly that I'd actually taken. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with them now, because I've never processed a pet ventosa. So, this is a few years back now, and I set about trying to work out how I was going to process it. And I wanted an impressionist image, but I also wanted something very bright, because that light, had hit that tree, and I wanted to try and capture that. So I developed a process by which to to process my post-process my pet ventosa images. Autumn Red has been a very successful image for me. It's on my daughter's wall. It's on my wall. I never get tired of looking at it, because I can remember that tree. Unfortunately, it will never be like that again, and it can never be photographed again, because now the land is very, very boggy, and there's a lot of debris and foliage around the tree. So it would be impossible to do the same photograph. But there's two things, isn't it, really? This particular picture reminds me that everything we see where we live locally, we can unsee, because it becomes part of a routine scene that you stop looking where you live. And I think some of us during COVID actually rediscovered our area. I discovered I'd got a bluebell wood just up the road, which I didn't even know about. And I often think this tree is my reminder that don't take your local area for granted. Really look to see what's there, and look at different times of the day, because when the light changes, you may have a picture that you haven't had before. So it remains one of my most favourite, along with my colours and curves.
Thank you. And the thing that jumped out at me is, I suppose, in stark contrast to the one we've just seen before, Lynne, is the colour palette, isn't it? Because the previous one had a somewhat restricted tonal palette or tonal range, whereas this, it just hits you. There must be every colour in the rainbow in this image. And that must have just utterly stood out to you. You must have envisaged this as you're walking around it, taking those 100 pictures.
It was stunning. And as the light, because obviously people think autumn leaves are either red or yellow or orange. But in actual fact, as a tree, starts to look at the top, it was orange, it was pink, it was red, deep red, dark red. It was all there, all waiting to be photographed. Unfortunately, didn't have a lot of debris around it. Obviously other foliage, but that blends quite well with the method I use. So yeah, it's a fabulous tree.
It really is. And I can see why, and especially as a moment in time, now that that's no longer available, adds weight and sort of a significance to it as well. So thanks very much for sharing these, Lynne. And my first question is, how did you actually pick which 5 from your collection, from your archive, because you have so many to choose from, so many really successful images? How did you actually manage to get these 5?
It was very difficult, to be honest. But I did have to really think about which images I have enjoyed personally for different reasons, because they have been moments in time. They're not, moments in time like street photography or, capturing a sunset or anything like that. But they've been moments in time for me personally. All of them. Moment when I found an image that I didn't think I'd get, which is colours and curves. When I found something around a corner that I didn't expect to see. When I've seen something in my area that I knew was there, but like Autumn Red, but I had never seen the light on it in that way. And the grasses, I spend ages, in fact, Sylvie gets really cross with me sometimes. Well, I don't get cross, but she says to me, what, you photographing grasses again? I have to I get drawn to them, and I can sit for half an hour and play with settings and things, trying to capture them. And that image was the only time I felt I actually captured what I wanted to capture. So it has been very hard to choose, because there is that famous quote, isn't there? What's your favorite picture? It's the one I'm going to take tomorrow. And I'm very, very much of that mode. I always think what I'm going to do tomorrow is going to be better than what I do today.
Super. Thank you. Well, we look forward to what you're going to take tomorrow as well, Lynne. And as well as these, one of the things that Lynne requested to be part of this, which is such a great idea, is that we wanted to showcase another creative photographer as well. So, Lynne, shall I pass over to you to showcase the person that you would like to share with us too? Because this person has some absolutely stunning work as well. And some people may know them, some people may not. So it's great to share. Thanks very much, Lynne.
Jo Stephen has this amazing gift for capturing moments of light, of nature. She is a botanist. You can tell her passion in her work. I mean, her website is absolutely super. She has an online gallery so that you can show yourself around of her project Wild. But these are just stunning. I mean, they're moments, they're imagined landscapes, but with a reality that is just absolutely glorious. Her passion for nature is just so evident in these images. Beside the Dorset, she lives in Dorset. She lives and she photographs in a 15-mile radius of where she lives. She's a gold medal winner. She's had her pictures exhibited at the Saatchi Gallery. I have followed her on Instagram for many, many years. She's been doing this for a very long time. And her pictures sing to me. And I would urge people to go and have a look at these images, because, I mean, just look. I mean, this was a murmuration on the left. This was real, this happened to her while she was there. These beautiful images of light on branches. That doesn't happen serendipitously. You have to be there. You have to live in that environment to get these kind of images. You have to be out in that environment. I mean, just look at these, who wouldn't be impressed by these fabulous images? They are really beautiful, and she deserves every accolade that she gets. She is a super, super, super photographer. And I just hope people will find her website and find her Instagram, and see the depth and breadth of her passion in her work.
Thank you. At the end of this presentation, I shall put on Jo's links as well as your links, Lynne, so that people can go and check out both of your work. But Jo's work is absolutely stunning, as is yours. So thank you so much for sharing, Jo's. And Lynne, thank you so much for coming along and being our first guinea pig and taking part in this. We really love you on Camversation. So it was a lovely thing for you to do. And I will get the chocolates in the post to you.
Oh, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. It's lovely to talk about your pictures, really.
And huge thanks to Lynne for being a guinea pig in our 5 from the archive. Lynne is a tremendous photographer. She's a great part of the Camversation community, as indeed are so many other people. Thanks so much for supporting this. Do share this with anyone you think may be interested.